Welcome to another episode of the Drew Aversa Show. I am excited to have my guest, Sarah Rothenberg, with me today. Sarah, what's up?
Hey, Drew, not much. It's great to be here.
Great to talk with you today. You and I met in the San Francisco Bay Area, and now you are staying alive on the East Coast in the wintertime. How's that going?
Oh my gosh. Well, practicing a lot of hygge.
A
You know
lot of
hygge? A
a
lot of
what?
hygge. It's the art of staying warm and cozy,
It's called
which
what?
I've become very good at.
How do you
Hygge.
spell it for the listeners?
Hygge.
Is this like from
It's the
from India? I know we're going to talk about yoga and mindfulness today, but like, where is the Hugga from?
it's Danish culture, and it is the art of being warm and cozy. So it can be anything from cozy blankets to fuzzy socks to this warm cup of tea that I was holding. And it's just creating a cozy environment in your home to weather the cold winters.
I dig it, and I take it back. It is a Danish experience, and the Danes they have some cool things. So Hugga, check it out, everybody. So Sarah, let's talk about your journey today, and then what you're up to. So you are a big time yogi. You started yoga
Yep,
quite a while ago, and then now you have this amazing company that you're teaching kids how to do yoga and how to survive
absolutely.
the pandemic and how to feel good in their body and not be stressed out with technology and all these things. So yeah, just let's hear about your journey a little, and then from there talk about kids and for parents. I think a lot of parents be curious, your advice on things, and you've had kids join your programs from Portugal to Brazil to all over the world on Facebook. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll start with my earliest yoga experience, which was actually an introduction from my father. My father was a very big yogi and actually still is. And he used to practice yoga in our home every day growing up. And so very early on, I learned the benefits of having a regular yoga and mindfulness practice. So when I went to grad school and I got my master's degree in early childhood education, I went to the classroom and I knew that I wanted yoga and mindfulness to be a cornerstone of my classroom and the work that I do with my kindergartners. So I practiced yoga and mindfulness in the classroom. I taught for 7 years. Of course, we learned other stuff as well. But really, I realized that yoga and mindfulness helped my students process emotions in a different way, and that there's a heart mind body connection, and that if we're feeling really stressed, that we can turn to our breath to help us calm down. And I learned that so often children are told to calm down, and that's a really abstract thought for a child at 5 years old. They're so used to hearing calm down, relax, sit down. So, what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about, well, what does it mean to relax? But more importantly, how do we get there? What tools do we need? And how can we provide that experience for ourselves? So I had 10 minutes of mindfulness in our classroom and it was wonderful. I started teaching outside of the classroom, and that's when I got my first kids yoga teacher certification, which was an actual certification to teach kids yoga.
That's awesome. And I think for the parents out there listening, they're probably wondering right now, okay, how do you get a kindergartner to do yoga? And then how do you get them to calm down?
Great question. Well, let me just pedal back. Kids yoga is has a lot of elements of adult yoga, but it's on a kid level. So it's really fun, it's really playful. We use a lot of storytelling to practice poses. And then also to practice mindfulness and breathing. So as a kindergarten teacher, and I'm sure there's a lot of kindergarten teachers out there listening, we have a lot of tools to work with children with. So I have stand timers and yoga cards and stories and books and all sorts of different tools that I bring into the classroom with me to help support the teaching and learning that we're doing. So you'd be surprised. Children are amazing at yoga and they love it. And what they really love is knowing that they can actually control their mind and their body when they're feeling really upset, when they're feeling those big emotions, that they have the tools within themselves to self-soothe and to calm themselves down and to manage their emotions. So I actually found that my 5-year-olds are some of the best yogis that I've ever practiced with.
This is awesome because you and I were talking prior to the show, just catching up about the reasons, like, why are we not teaching psychology and human behavior in school? I mean, you think about it, most people, their first experience with psychology is either, they go to college, they're a psych major, or they need some counseling and then they end up, going to therapy for a little bit or meeting a psychologist, whatever, or they get into marketing and maybe, through business psychology. But we don't teach the most important thing, mindset. We teach algebra, we teach geometry. When's the last time you've even used geometry?
Gosh, it's a good question, Drew. I mean,
You're still thinking. You're still thinking. You're still thinking. It's been forever.
Well, I was trying to come up, I'm
seriously.
a project-based educator. I'm a project-based educator. So I'm sure that there was probably 5 opportunities just this week that I used geometry. But
Sarah, you don't have to save the system. You don't have to save the system. All right, let's talk about psychology, human behavior, and why this is so important for kids today. And the cool thing is you've been an educator in different environments. You've also been on the private side of education. You've worked over with Asia, Europe. You've seen different models of education. And I think, when you look at statistically how many Americans actually travel outside of US, Canada, Mexico, Hawaii, that's kind of like its own country, even though it's part of the US, but like it's its own world, right? So when you really think about culture and exposure to culture, a lot of Americans are really on this big land called the United States, and we're not exposed to different ways of thinking, of doing, and evolving. So our system really stays isolated. We justify that this is like the best way of education, but we know, because you and I both know Silicon Valley really well, tech executives send their kids to schools and they're not educated the same way that the general public who goes to public schools are educated. So let's talk about education and how we can make the model better and what teachers can do to bring in natural ways to help kids deal with energy. I feel so much for these kids today because a lot of kids, when you talk about being calm, they're labeled with ADD. And then they go to a doctor, they're given a pill, is the same thing, my journey as a first responder with mental health. It's like you literally meet a doctor, and there's great doctors, not knocking on doctors, but it's the system, right? It's like you meet somebody for 10 minutes, you have a problem, you're not quiet, you don't fit the model. Okay, then what do we do with you? We medicate you, quiet you down, and then go be the good kid, right? So we know that's pervasive in education today with the system design, and you're trying to create a better system and a better way of education. So let's talk about how yoga can actually achieve this, because yoga's been around for 3,000 years.
Yep. Yeah, kids are incredible humans. Kids are just incredible in general. And when you give children the agency to make their own decisions and to act independently, then they can do extraordinary things. And I think that empowering students to act and think independently is a really important piece of preparing our future leaders to be the change makers of the future. And I think that social emotional learning and yoga and mindfulness helps achieve that goal. And so when I bring yoga and movement and mindfulness into the classroom, we're talking not just about, okay, we're doing downward dog now. We're not, it's not, we're stretching our body. Yes, of course, there's the physical component, but really it's that mindfulness and social emotional learning component that we're building in this self-awareness and the social awareness and this responsible decision making. And all of that comes with the storytelling that we're doing in our classes and the work that we're doing together as we're exploring these social emotional themes.
So let's talk about social emotional education. What does that mean? I mean, that's a big thing. We hear about emotional intelligence, and I like what you talked about earlier is really going inward, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
understanding your emotions, understanding your triggers, understanding these things. How can kids do that, in school, and then take that to the more challenging piece, right? We know a lot of homes that these kids are in are not healthy environments, right? Where parents may not be encouraging them to go within abuse, different things that happen. So what's the role of an educator nowadays as we are more aware? We're really more aware of these issues in society. We're aware of these issues there, and these young kids are so precious, and their minds are easily shaped, right, by social media, technology. So how do you teach kids this social emotional component, which is really important? And then how do you help them with the journey with these external factors of, parents and those other things that where they're not in a position to say, hey, I want to leave home. I'm 10 years old, my home life is really rough, or I'm getting bullied at school. So what does that look like for a young child?
Well, what we can do is we can give tools to the children to help manage difficult situations and to build a resilience toolbox. And I can give you just a really brief example from just the other day. I was working with a student in a class, and as we often do, we were going on a yoga walk where I'm guiding children through several yoga poses by way of, storytelling. And we're in this forest and we're walking around, we're seeing all these beautiful things, and all the students are calling out the different things they're seeing. They're seeing butterflies, and we'll go into the butterfly pose, or we're seeing waterfalls and we'll go into the waterfall pose, which is really fun. It's a great way to teach kids yoga poses. But what I'm always trying to do is I'm always trying to find the social emotional themes within these experiences. So I like to prompt them with what happens when we approach a challenge. How do we deal with that challenge? And how are the different ways that we can work through the challenge? So, simple challenge. This was a group of 4-year-olds, and I said, "Oh no, we got to a tree, right? And we did tree pose." And I said, "What should we do at the tree?" And one of the students said, "We should climb up into the tree and get stuck in it." And for me, as an educator, I thought to myself, well, this is a student that is working through something that could be potentially scary, or something that they're processing in their head. It's a scary thing for a child to think about getting stuck in a tree, right? It's a real fear. So in the class, we worked through what would happen if you climbed the tree and got stuck in it. And so we really explored, well, how could we get down from the tree? Who could help us? Who are the adults in our lives that we could call for help to? And so I think that that's just one experience that, when you have children that are approaching challenges in their life, to kind of work through it through storytelling. Now, I'm not a child psychologist. I have spent a lot of time teaching children and working in education. But that's kind of one example that I use when we're talking about how to, approach challenge.
I love what you said though, because it's true for adults as well. Because what you mentioned is there's a fear of getting stuck in the tree. And you said, which is powerful, that is a real fear. So often we try to validate what somebody should, or what logically is a right fear, or we tell people that you should not be afraid. And this is a lesson for adults listening to,
Mm-hmm.
for each other, right? Just as humans, as peers, as people of the same age, if somebody is afraid of something, it's not your job to tell them not to be afraid of it. It's to really
Absolutely.
check in, right? And to validate for a second and say, hey, I understand you might be afraid. Tell me a little bit more about that. And then
Absolutely.
we jump into the mindfulness piece of realizing that that's a story. It may not be true. And then how do we shift into the more present moment, right?
Right. And exactly, Drew. And being able to use your yoga mat as a safe place to explore strong emotions such as fear is really powerful. And before we start all of our yoga classes, we do a yoga walk around the mat. And I have the children walk the perimeter of the yoga mat. And, we talk about how it's a fun balancing exercise. And if you lose your balance, that's okay. Just get back up and try again. But really, what I'm doing when I'm creating that experience is I'm giving students, the physical and visual representation that they are safe on their yoga mat and that this is a safe place to talk about these feelings and to explore it. And of course, like I said, sometimes we do free stance, and that's really fun too. But really just knowing that you can come to this mat and this is your safe place. And I'm sure that a lot of adults identify with that feeling as well, knowing that if you're dealing with a difficult time or you're feeling really stressed or upset, that you can go to your yoga mat and you can practice yoga, and that most times you will feel better coming out of it. I think that's what draws a lot of us, you and I, we're yogis, to our mat to practice. To go back to your earlier question, kind of the journey, we stopped the journey early. I still have a whole second part of the journey to share, which is
Yes, let's
really
talk
the
about the
exciting
journey. Let's
part.
go back.
But so I started teaching yoga online when the pandemic started and we went into self-isolation. I had never taught online before. I had to figure it out, like many of us did. And I started teaching kids yoga online because I knew that if there was ever a time to bring centering and grounding to children, it was when we went into self-isolation. So I started teaching yoga to families, like you said, around the world. And I had a regular lunchtime yoga every single day. I think I told you this. It started as a 30-day challenge where I was teaching for 30 straight consecutive days. And then it turned into a 60-day challenge. And before I knew it, I was teaching 74 straight days of kids yoga. And, to go back to your earlier, how do you reach, what happens, I guess, your question of what happens if you're reaching children in different parts of the country or different parts of the world, and how do they respond to yoga and how do their families respond to yoga? Well, I kind of already know that answer as of right now, because I was teaching to, and still am teaching to, children that I would have never been able to teach when I was living in Boston or I was living in San Francisco, because now with the exposure and the opportunity to expand our reach digitally, we are able to do that. And my answer for you is still, I have never received concern from parents that they don't want their children practicing yoga.
That's amazing. And if you
But
know
if
me,
it
like,
happens, I'll let you know.
let me know, because I've had some people talk about yoga like in crazy ways that they think it's like changing the religion and all that. And yoga is so beneficial that I think, yeah, opening the mindset and understanding the benefits of it from a health standpoint, an emotional standpoint, mind, body, heart, as you say, is wonderful. So yeah, get your kid
Absolutely.
on the yoga mat and get yourself on the yoga mat too. Like, yeah,
Absolutely. And you
yeah.
know what? If you can't get onto the yoga mat, just stop right now and take a deep breath.
Do you feel better?
I feel better. Do you feel
Yeah, I
better?
feel better.
But sometimes
I'm,
that's all you need.
I'm zen. Okay, but not too long, because we have to talk about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is crazy exciting. So, out of zen into, you talk about a digital business.
Do I
Everybody's
get a
like,
chime?
yeah, I get the chime, like, ding. Okay,
Transition.
transition. So everybody is stuck at home. You started your business at home. I grew the heck out of my company this year with books,
Awesome.
online courses, everything. So I think it's really about mindset, right? Like you can go, oh wow, this is the worst year of my life, or I'm actually going to change and get with the times
Absolutely.
and revolutionize everything. So people listening, Sarah, where's your yoga studio?
In my old bedroom.
I
Yeah,
love it.
when the day I decided to teach online yoga, my husband is amazing and he's super supportive, and he helped me flip our bedroom into a yoga studio, and we lived with a mattress in our hallway for 2 months. We slept in the guest bedroom, and it's a wonderful studio, and I have all the space I need, and you know, it works. It totally works.
That's what it is, everybody, to be an entrepreneur. That's what it looks like. It doesn't look like all the famous people you see with 2 million Instagrammers. Sarah will be there with her yoga business, Child's Pose
Wellness.
Wellness, childsposewellness.com. You can hit her up on Instagram, Facebook, social media, website, all these things.
Child's Pose Kids on Instagram.
Child's Pose Kids on Instagram. Check that out. So that's what it looks like, everybody. And people see the outside of success. They see the Instagram world, they see that, but you are creating massive value for families, for kids, for educators. And you have people literally from all over the world now because you have a digital business, an online business.
Yeah.
How's it feel?
Exhausting. And absolutely wonderful. And it is so rewarding, Drew. I love just getting to connect with people. That's something that I've always valued in my entire professional career, is connecting with people the way you and I connected. I was at I don't even know if you remember this, but I was at a retreat with Alanis Morissette when you and I met. Alanis Morissette was hosting a retreat called, I think it was The Inner and Outer You. And I think half the people who were taking the retreat were really interested in hearing what she had to say. And I think the other half were people who were 90s fans like myself, who wanted to see and learn and spend time with Alanis. Um, but that all goes back to how I love connecting with people. And you and I connected that random weekend. You weren't in that retreat, but
No,
I think
I
we
was at this
started a
entrepreneurs retreat for soulful purposes and all these amazing people that I met, just great entrepreneurs of different companies. But I remember when Alanis Morissette checked in, and I was like, I was standing right by there. I'm like, oh, that's Alanis Morissette. Oh, isn't it ironic? Haha, I know that's
that was
a
good,
bad
but I'm
joke. You
bummed.
have to be from the 90s like us to understand that that was a song. So, as far as people getting linked up with you, connecting with you, what's the best way for them to find you? And then, if they have kids, how do they go about enrolling their kids to be calmer, more zen, more whatever the parents need from you? How do you connect with them? How do they connect with you?
Uh, Absolutely. We would love to have you in class. We specialize in children 3 through 8 years old, but big kids and grown-ups are always welcome to join. You can find all of our classes at childsposewellness.com, or you can follow us at Child's Pose Kids on Instagram and Facebook. We just launched our Holiday Kids Yoga pop-up, which is coming out next week, which is going to be the first week in December. Um, it's a little outside of the typical class that we might do. It's a big holiday yoga dance party. So we'll be celebrating all of the winter holidays, dancing around on our yoga mats and just having an absolute blast. Drew, I'm going to try using a green screen. I had a really awful, not an awful, I had a very traumatic experience trying a green screen once. So this is going to be my second time bringing a green screen into one of the classes. But I think it's going to be incredible.
Just be yourself. That's all I have to say. Yourself is awesome. The green screen, technical things. Yeah, don't go too Hollywood. You're doing great.
It's going to be snowing in my studio.
Well, I hopefully can get the invitation. I can dance with you on the yoga mat too, from my neck of
Absolutely.
the woods, the West Coast.
You can rock around your yoga mat.
Is Santa coming?
No, no.
What's that?
Santa's busy right now.
I mean, how is
This is like
Santa
the busiest.
traveling?
This is like
How
the busy
is
season.
is he going to be safe with COVID?
Yeah, he always wears his mask.
Santa, so when you kids and kids at heart are listening to this conversation, this is your public service announcement from Santa's workshop from the North Pole. Wear your mask.
Ho ho ho.
And we're out. Sarah, so great to have you today.
Absolutely. This was a blast. It was so great to reconnect with you, Drew. And I love all the work you're doing. And I'm looking forward to continuing to follow all of your great success.